So once again, welcome back, guys. So today, so yesterday we learned about FIFO, right? Where we have to keep track of the batches that we purchased because whichever batches came first, we decided that those ones are going to be sold first, right? So in this case right here, I'm going to teach you the second method, which is going to be Lifo, which means last ones in are the first to go out. So for last in, first out. Okay, and let's get started. So once again, this is how we cost our inventory, right? This is how we keep track of it. So every time we sell our inventory items, this is how we write it off in our books. Okay, so again, we looked at FIFO, which is a typical like grocery stores. And now today we're going to be learning the other method, which is going to be LIFO. Okay, so this is where, like a electronic store or a cell phone store, usually their latest and the greatest models would be sold out first compared to their older models, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look into how we calculate our LIFO. So in this case, right, the formulas here are all going to be identical, okay? The only difference here is that as we fill out our table, right, everything's going to look exactly the same. The only difference here is that when we actually start calculating the cost of goods sold section, that's where we have to understand the concept where we have to apply, well, which batch came first and then which batch came last, okay? And that's the only difference here between the two methods is when we calculate the cost of goods sold, it's going to be which batch are you going to calculate first. Okay, so in this case, the formulas are all identical. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply that. So once again, this example says right here that on June 1st that we made a purchase of 100 toys for $1.25 and the freight was $25. Right? So again, purchase expense, freight expense, and accounts payable, okay, is going to get us to $150. Okay. Then we're going to plug it into our window or our inventory worksheet where we need to solve for those 5 components once again. So the very first one is going to be solving for the purchase price, okay, which is straightforward. It's going to be your quantity times your unit price, right? Will give you your purchase expense. Okay, so in this case, I bought 100 units for $1.25 each. So therefore, my total purchases here is going to be $125, right? Then I need to calculate my total cost, which I just add my freight of $25 to give me a grand total of $150, okay? Once again, because we are using LIFO, we need to keep track of which batch came first and which batch came last. So in this case, right, this purchase or per cost per item is going to be, you're taking your total cost, which is 150, and you're going to divide it by your total quantity, which in this case is 100, right? We bought this batch right here is 100 items. So then that's going to give us a cost per item. So then every time we sell a batch of inventory, right, if we sell anything from this batch, it's going to cost $1.50 each, right? So all that is the same as for any of the methods, right? As long as we're able to understand that this is how we calculate the total cost and get our per unit, our cost per unit, right? So once again, the example 2 says that on June 11th that we end up purchasing an additional 100 toys at $1.28 with the freight costing $26. So same thing once again. We're going to do our purchase expense and put our freight there to get our total amount of $154. Okay. We're going to plug it into our inventory worksheet one more time, okay, because now we have more inventory that we're going to be dealing with. we entered in that on June 11th, we have a total quantity of 100 items costing at $1.28. So here's the same thing that goes here. We got to solve for the purchase price, which is $1.28. Then we got to solve for our total cost. So $1.28 plus the 26 gives me $1.54. And then last but not least, we also need to calculate our cost per item because now I have a second batch of inventory, and this second batch of inventory is cost $1.54 for that batch for per item. Okay. So as we can see here, right, we have exactly 2 batches of inventory, right? We have our first batch of inventory, which we bought on June 1st, and our second batch, which we bought on June 11th, okay? Now, of course, with the given scenario, we know that on the June 15, we have X amount of inventory on hand at the end. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tally up all my totals because I've reached the end of my accounting period, okay, or I took my physical count, okay. So here I'm recognizing that I have a total purchases of 200 units, giving me a total of $253 at a total with a total freight of $51, giving me a total cost of $304. Okay. And we're going to take these 4 numbers and we're going to apply them to our bottom half of our inventory worksheet like we've been doing before, right? So here we plug in all those numbers that are going to be linked. So such as the quantity, right? We purchased 200 items at a purchase price of $253, right? In this case, I'm not going to teach you returns and allowances just yet. So our assumption is that our subtotal is going to be the 200 at 253. Okay. We're going to add our freight, right? Freight doesn't add to quantity, but it adds to the total cost, okay, of the $51 to give me a grand total net purchase of 200 items or toys at a total of $304. Okay. In this case, right, we're assuming that there is no beginning inventory. So therefore, we need to plug in our net purchases, which is going to be exactly what we solved for from above. And then our total goods available is going to be your beginning balance plus your net purchases, which in this case, 200 plus 0 is 200. 304 plus 0 is 304. Okay. We were also given that on June 15, that you had a total of 80 toys available left on hand. So therefore, in this case, right, we had a total of 200 items. So therefore, if we have a total of 80 items left in inventory, we must have sold 120 units. Okay. So let's take a look at what our available we have here, right? We have 2 batches of inventory. We have one on June 1st and one on June 11th, exactly how it looks right there in our table. So in this case, because we're using Lifo, meaning the last ones in are the first to go, we're going to start from the bottom here, right? Because that was the last batch of inventory that we purchased last, right? We purchased that one on June 11th. June 11th, which is cost me $1.54 each, is going to be the first batch I'm going to be taking out first. So in this case, right, we know that we sold a total of 120 items, which in this case, right, therefore, we're going to take our first batch of 100 items at $1.54 to give us a total of $154. Okay. Then we have to sell 20 more items because we sold a total of 120 items, not 100. So therefore, we're going to take our remaining 20 items away from the last batch of inventory that we actually have, which is our very beginning inventory, right? The one above it, which costs $1.50 each, which in this case, right, $1.50 each times 20 gives you $30. So at the end of the day, your cost of goods sold is going to be your $154 plus the $30 to give you a grand total of $184. Right? That's the total cost of your goods available. Right? And then last but not least, you need to solve for your ending inventory, which you have two choices, right? You could take your 180 multiplied by the $1.50 to get you 120, okay? Or you could simply just take your goods available of 304, subtract out your cost of goods sold, which was 184, to get your grand total of 120, right? Doesn't matter which one that you want to solve for, right? You're still going to get the same answer. Okay. So now that's how we solve for figuring out the inventory worksheet using Lifo. Okay. So in this case, there you have it, right? We finished our table. So now that we've done that, notice this, right? We started from the bottom of our inventory on hand, right? We got rid of our last batch that we purchased, and then we slowly make our way up to the top, okay? Any questions here?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So then, again, because we are doing periodic inventory, we must complete our adjustment entry to reflect the total amount of inventory we actually have on hand. So in this case, right, say the journal's going to say, well, we're going to take our bucket of purchase expense because that's how we originally recognize our periodic inventory, right? We recognized it as a purchase expense, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take our purchase expense and we're going to dump that bucket into our inventory and our cost of goods sold. So in this case, right, by doing the inventory worksheet, we already solved for the answers for filling out your journal. So in this case, our ending inventory was 120 toys, okay? And our cost of goods sold, right, which was the 184, which we solved for, okay? And then, of course, your purchase expense and your freight expense, right, which we know to be 253 and the freight was 51. So if you actually calculate it, your debits and your credits should match on both ends. And that's how we do the conversion entry, right? We're taking our buckets of purchase expense boxes and the freight expense box, and we're going to essentially dump it into either inventory or we got to say that we sold some along the way. Any questions here?
Nope.
Okay. So then we're going to talk about beginning inventory, right? So from that previous scenario, right, on June 15, we had a total of 80 toys available left on hand. So then this time, right, but this time it totaled 120, right, because each cost per item was $1.50, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to plug that into our beginning inventory, right, and we're going to treat it as if when we calculate our cost, it's going to be part of how many goods we actually have available to sell. So once again, we also made a couple more purchases of other extra inventory. On June 18, we purchased another additional 100 toys at $1.27. And then on June 23rd, we purchased additional 100 toys at $1.30. Okay? And here's also something that you need to know here, that on June 30th, someone took a physical count and found that there were 60 toys left on hand. Right? So let's go ahead and plug all those numbers into our inventory worksheet. So once again, this middle section here is for your purchases only, right? When we talk about beginning inventory, you're going to plug that into that extra table on the side, on the right side. Right? So in this case, I'm just recording all of my net purchases. So here you go, 100 toys at $1.27 with a freight of $25. So there we go. Purchase price is $127 plus $25 gives you a total cost or total cost of 152. Okay. Then once we have our total cost of 152, right? Figure out the cost per item to be $1.52. Okay. Once again, plug in that second batch of inventory. Okay, in this case, which was the 100 items at $1.30, giving you 130. Okay, plus your freight of 26 to give you 156. Once again, plug in that number to solve for the cost per item, which in this case gives you $1.56 each. Okay. Total up your totals because this is where you're going to plug in for the bottom half for your net purchases. And then we're going to plug those numbers in. Now, here is the difference between this. Now, if you line up all the items in your inventory, right, you're going to notice that you have June 15, June 18th, and June 23rd, right? Exactly that exact order. So that means you had your beginning inventory is going to be as if that's what you started off on June 15. So in this case, the order that I purchased was 80, 100, and then the other 100, right? Because we made that purchase earlier. I think it was on June 1st, right? But that's the stuff that we carried over. So in this case, right, if we're using the Lifo method, how are we going to calculate the cost of goods sold? Okay, so once again, we figured our numbers here, right? We had a beginning inventory of 80 units, okay, at a total cost of $120, right? Because we have beginning inventory, we must add that together to give us a grand total of our goods available, okay? So in this case, that means we have a total of 280 toys available that I can sell, okay, at a grand total of $428 even, okay? So then we were given that that on June 30th, we had a total of 60 units on hand. So therefore, if I had a total of 280 and I have 60 left, therefore I should have 220 items left available. I'm sorry, I must have sold 220 items. Okay. So now, once again, now we're going to take a look at our inventory on hand, or what available goods that we have available. So in this case, right, we have my 80, 100, and 100, right? The 80 is at $1.50. My 100 in the middle is for $1.52. And the last batch that I bought recently on the 23rd of June was for $1.56. So in this case, when we decide to calculate the cost of goods sold, we're going to treat it like Lifo, where whichever batch that we purchase last is going to be the first one that is going to be taken out from. So in this case, my 100 at my $1.56 is going to go out first. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that item right there. Okay, so now we sold only 100 items. We still have 120 more items to sell. So that means our next batch we're going to take out from is going to be for that 200 items, okay, for $1.54, which, since I'm taking all of it, I'm going to go ahead and eliminate all of it, right? So now a total of 200. So now I have 20 more items left to sell. So in this case, I only have one batch of inventory. So I'm going to take my 20 of those items and I'm going to multiply it by my $1.50 to give me a grand total of $30 once again, okay, to give me a grand total to sell 220 items at a grand total of $338 even, okay. So we plug that $338 into my cost of goods sold, and then we can either calculate my ending inventory to be, whether I take 60 times $1.50, which gives me 90, or I could simply take my 428 and minus 338 from it, and you should get the same number of 90. Right? Oops. Any questions there? So in this case, this is how we keep track of the inventory, is that my last batch that I just bought is going to be the first one to sell out. Okay. Now, there are many reasons why we should do this way, because, again, it depends on what kind of market that you're doing, right? It depends on what kind of item you sell, but it also depends on how conservative you are when it comes into calculating the inventory assets, right? You definitely should want to keep your inventory items reflecting a specific way. Grocery stores typically would be more for FIFO, where all your older stuff is going to go out first. But in this case, right, it just makes sense to just get rid of our newer batches of inventory, because for whatever reason, whether you are an electronics store, it just happens the flow of a transaction is you're going to end up getting rid of those more expensive items first. Okay?
I'm curious. When you
Yes.
use Lifo, it is not. It is. You don't. At the beginning, you make more money, but later, if you have merchandise too old, you have a loss. No, with that merchandise. No, you cannot sell it. If you talk about electronic, you have a problem later for this with this
Oh,
merchandise.
yes, absolutely. When we talked about in chapter 4, when we talk about the what happens when you do historical costs and you have electronics, then your older materials are going to start to lose value, right? That's what we're going to learn in chapter 6. It's called the lower cost of market. We're going to see what happens to that. Now, in this case, of course, you are correct. You're going to take a loss anyway. But that's just the doing a business as usual, right? Most cases, right? Grocery stores, they don't make a lot of profit because a lot of their goods go bad. Not everybody's going to go to the store and buy all the apples. Not everybody's going to go to the store and buy all the milk, right? There's a point in time where, what if, you have to put them on sale to get people to come and buy them, right? Those kind of things, right? And you don't just sell one perishable good, you sell 30 items or hundreds of perishable goods, right? Like, you don't just sell apples, you sell bananas, oranges, pineapples, right? All of those are going to go bad. So at the end of the day, every type of business that you are looking at can have actually a fair chance of making not that much of a profit. Okay, just because depending on what kind of store they are, right? So for a great example, right? Like you just said, if this is an electronics store, they'll only make profits in the newer, later models, but everything that they have that's old they have to take a loss for that, because you can't expect to sell an old laptop for the same price as the new laptop. No, and people don't want to buy the older stuff unless it's like, well, if the difference between the older one and the newer one is not much, then it's not going to make a difference. But yeah, you're right there. So again, depending on what kind of business you are, most cases you're barely going to make a profit. Mm-hmm. Right. So there we go. Okay. So once again, we finished computing our inventory worksheet. So there we have it right here. Okay. We just simply plug in our numbers, right? But this time, because we had beginning inventory, we must also add that into our pile of part of our goods available, right? So in this case, we're going to recognize, well, my ending inventory anyways was $90 because I had 60 items left at $1.50, right? Which gave me my ending balance to be $90, right? We also sold $338 worth of items. Okay, in this case, we sold toys. And then our purchase expense, our freight expense, okay? And then our beginning inventory, right? Because in this case, think of it this way. You have your purchase expense, your freight expense, right? And then you have your inventory on hand. What you're going to do is you're going to combine all that together, and then you're going to dump each box in either to the ending inventory or to the actual cost of goods sold. Okay, so at the end of the day, we're zeroing out all these three accounts right here, your purchase expense, your freight expense, and your toys. And then we're going to either rearrange them into the toys account or the cost of goods sold. But in this case, we just simply took our, our beginning inventory and we just dumped it right back into our ending inventory because our beginning inventory was technically our ending inventory because we still carried the same 60 toys from June 1st. Okay? All right? So that's what you have to do here. Right? So chapter review once again, right? This is what you do when you journalize purchasing your items. And then this is what happens when you reach the end of your journal or you reach the end of the accounting period that you must calculate your conversion entry, or in this case, you must complete a conversion entry. Okay. So, like I've mentioned before, right, this is going to go by a lot quicker just because we learned how to utilize the inventory worksheet yesterday. So now, computing the exercise 5.4, the only difference that we're only going to be experiencing is how to calculate the cost of goods sold. Instead of doing it from top to bottom, it's going to be from bottom to top. Okay, so once again, what we're going to do is I'm going to have you guys continue to practice and practice to journalize the transaction. So for just scenario number 1 only, I want you to continue practice to journalize the transaction, and then to practice journalizing the conversion entry. Okay. So let's go ahead and okay. You know what? Since I'm gonna actually switch this up real quick. Since we've been doing the same journalizing for part 1, I'm gonna have you guys actually journalize the second part instead. Okay. So you won't practice this one because this is rinse and repeat. It's the same exact numbers, but I'll have you practice the part 2. Okay. So we'll just fill in the worksheet for part 1, okay? But you are going to still do your conversion entry for part 2. I mean for question number 2, okay? So I hope that makes sense. So in this case, we're going to skip journalizing for the first section just because we've done this already 4 times, right? This was exercise 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. We did the same exact scenario, right? Purchasing 1,000 toys at $500. So what I'm going to do at $5 each. So I want you to journalize the second part, okay? So let's go ahead and practice putting these numbers into our inventory worksheet. So on April 5th, okay, we purchased 1,000 toys at $5 each with the freight costing $100. So inventory worksheet number 1, and let's plug these numbers in. Okay, whoop, too much. Okay, so starting from the very first one, right? Remember, this is Lifo. It is April 5th. We purchased 1,000 units at $5 each with the freight costing $100. Okay, so can someone tell me how to calculate the purchase price? What was that, Nancy? I can barely hear you. Good. Quantity times the unit price of $5 to give me a grand total of $5,000. Okay. What's my total cost? 5,100. Okay, good. Last but not least, how do we solve for our cost per item? Good. So we're going to take our total cost divided by our quantity. So that's 5,100 divided by 1,000. And what is my cost per item? $5.10. Okay. Good. So then, April 10, we purchased an additional 750 units at $5.75, with the freight costing $75. So, plug those numbers in. It's 410, 750 at 575 with a freight of 75. Okay. So what's my total purchase price for this one? Okay. Plus $75. Okay. So 4,312.50 plus 75 gives you 4,387.50. Okay. We're gonna solve for our cost per item here, which is going to be $5.85, right? You take your $4,387.50 and you're gonna divide that evenly across 750 units. So then here on April 20th, we end up purchasing 200 units at $6 each with a freight of 20. Okay, so let's plug that into our inventory worksheet. April 20th, 200 units at $6 each with a freight of 20. So what is my total purchase price? Okay, good. And then add that 20 to get a total of 1220. So here, what is going to be my cost per item? $6.10. Okay. Then on April 25th, we purchased additional 500 units at $6.25 each with a freight of $50. So I'm going to go ahead and come here. 425, 500 units at $6.25 each with a freight of 50. So what's my purchase price here? Good. Plus my $50 freight, $31.75. Okay. And that brings my cost per item to be $6.35. Good. Okay. So let's take a look here. On April 30th, you had a total of 600 units on hand. Okay. So if that's the case, right, let's go ahead and plug that number in, because now we know that our ending inventory means that we have a quantity of 600 units. Okay. So now that tells us we reached the end of our period, right? We reached the end of April, so April 31st, or April 30th, excuse me, tells us that we have 600 units left on hand. So therefore, we need to solve for our total purchases here. So I'm going to use my equal sum, tally up my totals here. In quantity, how much total units did I purchase? 2,450. Good. Okay. What was my total purchase price? $13,337.50. Okay. What was my total freight? $245. And then last but not least, what is my total cost? $13,882.50. Okay. There you go. So now that we solved for our total costs, right, our totals, we can plug those numbers into our our bottom half of the inventory worksheet. So in this case, right, for my net purchases, I purchased a total quantity of 2,450, right? And my total purchase price was 13,637.50, right? We're going to assume no returns or no allowances, right? We won't learn that till next week, okay? And now let's go ahead, right? This usually will decrease your purchases, right? If you return an item, you would no longer have the 2,450, you would have less, okay? So in this case, because we have 0, our assumption is that our subtotals is going to be the same, okay? We also need to add our freight, which freight adds nothing to quantity, but it does add to the total cost, right? Our freight was $245. Okay. So now we got to figure out what our total net purchases is, right? Because we have to add these two numbers together, right? So 2,450 plus 0 gives you 2,450, right? In this case, my 13,637.50 plus my freight will give me a grand total of 13,882.50. Okay. Okay. So that's my total net purchases. Okay. In this case, we're going to assume that we don't have any beginning balances. So we're going to carry down our net purchases that we solved from above here. Okay. And our formula to solve for our goods available, once again, is going to be my beginning balance plus my net purchases, right? To give you a total goods available, which in this case, I don't have any beginning balances. So in this case, my assumption here is that my net purchases is going to also equal my goods available. So if I have a total of 2,450 goods available to sell, and I have someone went down to the inventory basement to find out that I have 600 left on hand, how many items did I sell? $1,850. Okay. So now our job is to now solve for the total cost of my cost of goods sold. Okay. 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 So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and create my running balance once again so that I can solve for my goods, my cost of goods sold. So I'm going to go ahead and do it right here so I can easily transfer the information over. Okay. Okay. So I'm equal summing so then I can automatically be able to find out how many items I've sold, but at the same time figure out my total cost as well. Okay. So since we are using Lifo, okay, which batch of inventory am I going to be using first? Or which one am I going to sell out first? Yes, the 500 items, which cost $6.35, which in this case, I'm going to be using all of it because I've sold $18.50. That is definitely enough to get rid of this entire batch of inventory. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just copy the information over that I sold 500, right? Since it is going to, I'm going to be taking the whole entire batch, I don't need to necessarily calculate my quantity times my cost because I already know what that whole entire batch is going to cost me. It's going to cost me $3,175. Okay? So there goes one of my batches of inventory. Right? So from here, I sold my first 500, so I still have $13.50 left to go. Okay? So which batch of inventory am I going to be taking out from next? We're going to take out the 200, okay, at $6.10, which we already know to be a total of $12.20.
You don't have to take the 750 before.
750 is my second batch.
Yeah,
Okay,
you did it
I'm doing last in our first out.
Oh,
So in this case, I'm gonna go from the bottom because the last batch I purchased was the 25th of April, right? I already got rid of that. So my next batch I'm gonna sell was gonna be my 20th of April. Okay, so I have to get rid of that whole entire batch right there.
my mistake.
No worries. Okay. So here, if I add these up together, I have a total of 700 units right now, right? But I need to sell more than that. I still have 1,150 left. Right? So then, my next batch of inventory that I need to sell is going to be this batch right here. Since you were talking about it, Isabel, that's the next one that has to go because these ones are already gone, right? So what's the next last purchase that I purchased, which is April 10 for $7.50. In this case, I still have 1,100 left to sell, so I can get rid of that entire $7.50, which cost me $5.85. Okay? Which I already know that whole entire cost is going to give me $4,387.50. Okay? So by adding that all up, I have a total of $14.50. I need to get to $18.50. So in this case, how many more do I need to sell? We need 400 more. And we only have one batch of inventory left, which is the last one, or which is the very first one that we purchased, right? Now, in this case, we're only taking a small portion of our first batch. How much is it going to cost me per item to sell? $5.10. Yeah, so in this case, this is where I actually have to calculate it, because I need to figure out if I sold 400 items that cost $5.10 each, what's my total cost going to be here? $2,040. Okay. And because I done my equal sum at the bottom of this table here, right? For selling a total of 1,850 items, I have a grand total of $10,822.50, right? I just add up and summed up all these totals right here. Okay. So that means I solved for my total cost of selling 1,850 items at $10,822.50. So therefore, what should be my ending balance? $3,060. Okay. You can either solve it like this, or if you just know that you have 600 left anyways, right? You could take the cost per item of 510. So 600 times 510 should get you the same answer of 360. Okay. Now that we completed our inventory worksheet for the month of April, let's go ahead and do our conversion entry. Okay. Okay. So let's see, it is April 30th. How should I write my conversion entry? Mm-hmm. Okay, so in this case, I didn't give you a specific item, so inventory first.
Cost of goods sold.
Cost of goods sold.
Purchase.
Purchase expense. And freight.
Right.
Good. So let's go ahead and plug in our numbers here. What was the total ending inventory? What was the total cost of my ending inventory?
3,060.
Good. What was the total cost of my cost of goods sold?
She's not talking. No, talk. Purchase.
What's my total cost of goods sold? $10,822.50. Good. What's my total purchases?
Ay, mairitu. Kasi 22 carajo. Total purchases 13,637.5.
Good. What was my total freight?
245.
$245. Good. All right.
Okay.
Now, again, as we practice, we need to make sure that our total debits and our total credits match before we can continue on to the next one. So there we go. I have 13,882.50 on the left, and I have 13,882.50 on the right. So in this case, we did our conversion entry successfully. We are completed with this transaction. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So you could add a little note here to say that you're converting converting to inventory. Good. Okay. Good. Okay, so this is where I want you guys to practice your journalizing here since these numbers are different. Okay. So in this case, right, question 3 says continue the inventory exercise, right? Your inventory method is still periodic and it's LIFO, okay? So here's the first thing that you have here. On April 30th, you have a total of 600 units on hand, right? Which, yes, we know to be true, right? But we solved it for our in our previous inventory worksheet, right? We know that out of the batches of inventory, we tapped into all 4. So therefore, the only one that we have left would be this batch right here, right? For our 600 units. So in this case, I'm going to carry that information over into my new inventory worksheet. Okay, but this time I'm going to plug it into my inventory on hand on the left side. So I have 600 units costing $5.10 each, which gives me a grand total of the $3,000.60. Okay. And because we know that's the total, I'm going to go ahead and mark that total right here down below. Since I only have one batch of inventory, I can just copy that down. That I have 600 units at a grand total of $3,060. Okay. You don't need to journalize this once again because this is information that we've already journalized in the previous exercise or previous problem, right? We've already journalized that we have 3,060 items in our inventory. So there's no need to actually redo another journal entry here. Okay. However, we do need to start journalizing once we make a new purchase of inventory. So in this case, on May 5th, we purchased a total of 500 units at $6.25 each, with the freight of costing $50. So, okay, this is where I'm going to give you a choice, okay? You can either go do the inventory worksheet first and then enter all that information into your journal afterwards, okay? Because at the end of the day, as long as you complete one or the other, right? Both of them must be done, okay? Then you'll be fine. As long as your journal always comes first, because we're journalizing our transaction. We purchased items of inventory. So in this case, right, you do have the option to do that so you can save yourself some calculation instead of having to do it twice, okay? So you can plug into your inventory worksheet first and then plug those numbers into your journal, okay? So I guess we could go ahead and do that. So our first purchase was on May 5th. We purchased 500 units at $6.25 each with the freight of $50. Right? So once again, what are my values going to be? Okay, what's my total purchase price?
$3,125.
3,125 plus $50 of freight gives me a grand total of
3,175.
3,175. Good. Okay. And then, so then, what is my total cost per item?
$6.35.
$6.35, right? You take your total cost of 3,175 and divide it evenly across the 500 units. Good. That means it's going to give me $6.35 per item that I sell. Okay. Good. So now I still have to journalize this transaction. So I'm going to go to my journal, okay? And how am I going to journalize the purchase of this periodic inventory? Isabel? Nancy? How do I journalize my purchase of inventory? Hold on, can you repeat that again? So you said purchase expense? For how much? Hold on, I knew another space there. So purchase expense for how much? Right? We could take that information from our inventory worksheet right here, purchase price or purchase expense for 3,125. so we don't have to do the calculations twice. Okay. What else would I be journalizing? Freight expense, okay. Which in this case, how much was my freight? $50. Good. And I believe, let's see what my scenario said. I believe I said, assume, nope, I didn't say anything. No, assume, but go ahead and assume that all purchases were made on an account. So in this case, right, since I'm not going to pay it now, I'm going to owe the money. So in this case, I'm going to be doing on accounts payable for the total of the $3,175. Once again, it's important to use notes here just because if we're making a bunch of purchases of inventory, right? It's kind of hard to say, well, what is this? First off, what is this inventory? Second of all, you know, how many units did you purchase? At what price point did you purchase it at? So that's where you're going to have to put in that we purchased 500 units. We don't know what those units are, right? I didn't say it was toys or anything like that. But we purchased it for $6.25 each item, right? You don't need to say freight because it's already right there that freight was $100, or sorry, freight was $50. So that's already self-explanatory. But the most important thing is that you should put this in here just in case you do have a returns and allowances, right? If you end up returning a product, you know exactly how much each item cost. Okay. Is that a question or are you confirming? Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. Yes. Okay. Good. So 500 units at 625, right? That's pretty straightforward. Right? So then on May 5th, oh wait, we just did that one. May 10, we end up purchasing an additional 800 units at $6 each with a freight cost of $80. Okay. Nope, May 10. 800 items at $6 each with a freight of $80. So what's my total purchase price here? Good, 4,800 plus $80 of freight gives me. And then what's my cost per item going to be here? $6.10. That's correct, right? You take your total cost of 4,880, and we're going to divide it by my 800 units to get a total of $6.10. Right? Good. So once again, right, I'm going to have you practice journalize this. Okay. So how should my journal entry look? Should look. Yes, it's going to look identical. Or to the previous one right here. Okay. And what is it? 510 now. All right. And we're going to change this because we end up purchasing 800 units this time at $6 each, right? And we already solved for these numbers, right, in our inventory worksheet. So purchase expense, right, which we solved to be, we know what freight is. Freight is $80, okay, whether you want to copy or not, or if you just know the information, then you can go ahead and plug that in, giving us a grand total of $880 that we owe. Okay. Okay. Can wait? Can you repeat that again and say a little slower? Correct, correct. In this case, in the previous one, I was specific that I said that assume that all purchases were made on an account, but I guess here I kind of missed it. So yes, so you only use accounts payable if you are, if the idea is that you're owing that person money or you place them on an account, meaning you have an account with this vendor, so they're allowing you to owe them. Now, if it's more specific, like a previous examples where I say that you paid with cash, then or you wrote a check, whatever it is, right? If I am specifying or anything like that, or a good way of indicating would be if you're given terms, that's your automatic assumption that you're placing it on an account. So yes, it's specified for transactions. Yes, but in this case, I'm telling you, just assume that all of these are on an account. Okay. So then on May 20th, we purchased another 300 units at $6.15, and the freight was $15. Okay. So May 20th, we have 300 units at $6.15 with a freight of 15. Okay. So in this case, what is my total purchase price here? $1,845. Why does that not look good? Right. We purchased 300 units at $6.15 with a freight of 15. Okay. Okay. All right. So in this case, 300 times 615 gives us 1845 plus 15. Right, 1860. So now what is going to be my cost per item? $6.20. Good. So let's plug those numbers into our journal because we once again made another purchase of inventory. Okay. This time it is May 20th, and we purchased 300 units at $6.15. Which we already solved in our inventory worksheet, right? We solved that it was a total of 1845 plus the $15 freight. Okay, which will give us a grand total of the $18.60. Okay. So the last purchase that we purchased is going to be on May 25th, where we purchase an additional 100 units at $6.30 with the freight costing $5. Okay, and again, on May 31st, you have a total of 400 units on hand. So let's plug in that last purchase of inventory on May 25th for 100 units at $6.30 with the freight costing you $5. So what's my total purchase price here? What was that?
630.
630 plus $5.
635.
635, which then gives me a total cost per item
6.35 cents.
$6.35. Good. Okay. So once again, I told you that on May 31st, we have a total of 400 units left on hand. So there you go. Plug in that 400 units. Okay. So therefore, we reach the end of the accounting period. So now we need to solve once again for our total totals. Okay. So again, what was the total amount that I purchased? What's the total amount that I purchased?
1,700.
1,700, good. What is my total purchase price? $10,400, okay. What was my total freight? $150 to give me a grand total cost of $10,550. Okay. So now that we have our information here, let's go ahead and plug those numbers into our net purchases. So once again, this one's straightforward, right? We purchased 1,700 items, okay, at a cost of $10,400. We're assuming that there are any returns and allowances. So if we subtract 0 out, we should get those same exact numbers. Okay. Our freight does not change our quantity, but it does change our cost, which in this case, we had $150 for freight. So in this case, let's add up our totals here. Okay, so I have 1,700 at a total of 10,550. Okay. Now here, did we have beginning inventory?
Yes.
Yes. How much was it?
600.
600 units, okay, at a total cost of $3,060. Okay, good. So we're going to carry our numbers from the net purchase. So we purchased a total 1,700 at 10,550. Okay. So therefore, we need to calculate what our grand total amount of units we have available to sell. So in this case, we're going to add them together. Okay. I should have a total quantity of 2,300 at a total cost of, what's my total cost here of my goods available? 13,610. Okay. So last but not least, we have our ending balance to be 400 units. So our assumption here is we have sold a total of 1,900 units. Okay. Okay. So once again, I'm going to build my little equal sum table right here just so that I have a running balance. So every time I sell a specific item, it will keep track of how many items I have sold. Okay. And I'm also going to apply that to my total cost as well. So then I know how much in grand total my total cost is going to be. Okay. So let's start off from this here. Now, if we are doing LIFO, okay, which batch are we going to take away from first? The 25th. Good. So in this case, right, our last purchase that we purchased was that 100 items at $6.35 each, which in this case, right, so we have 100 items at $6.35 each, which we know to be a total of 635. So therefore, that batch is gone. Okay, so we sold our first 100 items. We still got 1,800 more to go. Okay, so which batch is going to be taken away from next?
The 300.
The 300. And in this case, we're going to take away that whole entire 300. Okay, which we know to be $6.20, right? I'm just cell referencing so you know exactly where the numbers came from. Okay, which gave me a grand total of $18.60. Okay. So now we sold a total of 400. We still need 1,500 more items to sell. Okay. So then which batch of inventory are we going to sell next? We're going to sell the whole entire 800, right? So in this case, we're going to sell that 800, okay, which cost me $6.10, okay, which we already know is going to be a grand total of $8.80. Okay. So now we have a total of 1,200 units that we sold. Okay, how many more do we need to go? We need 700 more, right? So let's go ahead and take a look. So we got rid of these 3 batches of inventory here. What's left in my purchases?
500.
You have the 500. So in this case, I'm going to get rid of that entire 500 because that's all I have left for my purchases. Okay. And we know that's going to be a total of $635 each, which we know that this is a grand total of the $3,175. So then now that we sold everything that we purchased, right, all we have left is my beginning inventory, okay? So how many more items do I need to sell to reach to 1,900? I need 200 more. So in this case, let's take a look at my beginning inventory. How much is it going to cost me per item for my beginning inventory? $5.10. Since I'm only taking a small portion of that amount, I need to actually calculate what 200 times my 510 is going to equal. right? And what do we get for selling 200 items at $5.10?
$1,020.
$1,020. So there we have it. That's my cost of goods sold. And here we solved for selling a total of 1,900 items. Gave me a grand total, okay, of 11,570. So if I have a grand total of 11,570, how much is going to be my ending inventory?
$2,040.
2,040. Excellent. Okay. So once again, we solved our inventory worksheet, right? We used the LIFO method to calculate our total cost of goods sold. Okay. So in this case, right, we now need to complete our conversion entry. So let's go ahead and journalize that. Okay. I think I did forget to do the 100 units. Okay, so let me go ahead and enter that journal real quick, and then we'll complete our conversion entry afterwards because I forgot to do the 100 units. Okay,
The date. The date is the last day, the 31st or something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I just forgot to journalize the 25th, so I'm gonna do it real quick so we know that it was for 630 plus 5 gave me a total of 635. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that conversion entry real quick, which we know, right? So it's going to be on May 31st. Okay. So in this case, what is my conversion entry going to look like? You were going to do inventory. Good. What else?
And cost of goods.
Cost of goods sold.
Yeah.
What else?
Purchase expenses.
Purchase expense. And what else?
The freight.
And the freight. Okay. Is that all I have to put here?
No, you have to adjust the inventory.
Yes, we also have to enter in the last part of the inventory, okay? Now in this case, which inventory goes first?
The rest, the 400.
The 400, so the ending inventory. Good, that's correct. So let's go ahead and take a look. What was my total cost for my ending inventory? $2,040. What was the total cost of my cost of goods sold? Got 11,570. What was my total purchase expense?
$10,400.
10,400. What was the total freight? $150. And what was my beginning balance in my inventory?
600, but you sell 200.
Yes, yes, yes. But in this case, yes, we end up just transferring the 400 over. But yes, it's 3,060 for the 600 items. Yes. So therefore, right, rule of thumb here is we need to make sure that we equal sum our total debits. So we have a total of 13,600 on the left, and we have a total of 13,610 on the right. Okay, and all right, to conclude our journal, we're just going to complete it with to convert to inventory. Okay. Good. Any questions in regards to this? Okay, so right now, let's go ahead and take a break real quick, and when we come back, we'll finish the exercise number 2. Okay, so right now,